Hey everybody, it's Scott and Rita. This is Cosmic Dialog number 43. We're going to do a little follow-up on my dream. So, we're talking about this circle of 10 of us doing Cosmic Dialog. So let's just go into the future. Maybe we'll come up with our circle of 10 and how that happened in the future. So do you want me to start?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So I remember when I had this dream a long time ago about a circle of 10 and researchers and things like that. And so I wanted to kind of just come from the future way ahead of time and talk about how that circle of 10 group came about, how we got into attracting researchers, and then what happened, and what's shifted since then. So we'll see how far we can go with this. So we started, as everyone knows, years back, we started just doing these cosmic dialogues. We would notice the third presence. We would actually have synchronicities happen. And then I had a dream about, let's add positivity, extreme positive thought, along with this cosmic dialogue, and apply that to our life as well. So not only are we like projecting when we actually do this dialogue, we like super project everything with the world in a more positive light in the future when we gather as 10. We found 10 people when we started reaching out to common people. It wasn't people who were coaches or therapists or entrepreneurs or anybody who wanted to achieve things. It was people who were just common folks, who were open-minded. And those people showed themselves to us because we decided to just, it's not about those folks who want to be the big achievers. We'll just let folks come to us, and once we let go of that, then the right people came. The right people from all walks of life, because we opened our door. We didn't put a label of entrepreneur or artist or coach or anything else out of that, but we had some conversations, and people watched our YouTubes, and people watched us online, and there were certain people who were very attracted to that. Some folks who were just dreamers, people who walked dream space, and they come from wherever. And once we found those folks who were just authentic souls, that's how we got our 10. It wasn't because we recruited them from all these spaces. One of them was a child who was very imaginative, and so that child would come forward and actually bring us a different perspective. Another person was a very old person. We had all ages in this group of 10 was just, it almost just pieced itself together when we stopped having the effort. And we would also, as we built up to 10, we would do our cosmic dialogue in the future about who our next person and where it would come from, and then things would manifest. And so we could actually do a cosmic dialogue to bring these people to us, rather than us going out and searching. So for example, we said, I remember when we had a child come to us finally, and this is how this happened. And so then that would manifest that for us. So it was still that process. We had to trust that process still of this cosmic dialogue, putting ourselves in the future, being highly positive and highly sensitive, and not worrying about where it was going to do, if it was from a high achiever or not. So that's how we got to 10. And then once those 10 folks came aboard, people started watching us on YouTube, and we got some attention from other scientists and experimenters, and they started talking. And so that was kind of a very interesting time. And we actually kind of even Kylego this, or as we call Kylego in Cosmic Dialogue, what happens if we have kind of an infiltrator in there who wants to, who's come to us and is not necessarily 100% on board. And so we actually kind of wondered if that would ever happen. If there was somebody in our group that was there, but really wasn't totally on board and had their own egoic things, and when that would break down, and what it would take for them to break down, what it would take for that person to kind of leave. And so we knew that amongst our group there might be like one person or two that was in it for themselves that might have been disguised a little bit, or still had that fear going on. So what else did you figure out for this, Rita?
Well, what we noticed was really the key was when we offered, as you say, just common folk, not spiritually advanced people or people working to achieve stuff. It was people who wanted to serve, and the switch we put on it was that we're not serving victims of something. Like, people who volunteer are wonderful, giving hearts, but they're attempting to lift up people who have fallen into some crevasse of helplessness, and they need assistance, and there are people there to serve that. But we wanted to try, well, what if we serve just towards the positive results, not after the bad thing has already happened and now we need to help you. And not putting down volunteers who do that, because I've experienced that kind of service, and it's good for the spirit as well as the physical body. But that was the switch, and that's what made the researchers interested in us. And it was that serving piece that we wanted to appeal to people who had that feeling of a great desire to serve humanity, serve the condition of the earth, the condition of their own selves, their own soul and spirit and physical bodies, the conditions of the environment that we all live in, the conditions of systems in our society. Why not just go towards the greater good right now? Why wait for the economy to collapse and millions of people to be kicked out of their homes again to try to lift them up after they're homeless? Let's start working on it now. That was the approach that we started this whole thing with.
Yeah, and I really liked that we actually had some folks that came in who were, they saw through this ideology of victimhood, this ideology of why is it that we only start serving when our attention shifts onto someone that we start labeling a victim or someone that we start labeling as inspirational. What if we just served without having that, so that people wouldn't necessarily have to go through that, or I wouldn't have to go through that? There were people who actually saw this and saw this pattern in the world. They knew enough about suffering. Maybe they'd gone through something themselves or saw someone else, but they actually felt like they had this positivity about them where, common folks were just said, what if we didn't have to go through that? What if we could just be here to serve humanity by paying attention to humanity and those essences in us, rather than paying attention to something that, because it's fallen or that pulls at our heartstring, or because we see suffering that we have to fix. They kind of saw the whole picture, and that's why when we brought a kid into, there was a child who came in that was just total fit, somebody who knew, this kid is kind of into it. He saw our video and he starts talking to his friends, or teenage friends too, about let's talk about it in the future. It's a new way of playing pretend, and you can mess up, So it was really just refreshing because it was just like that idea of like, it was purposeful and it was serving, but there was a trust. There wasn't a, I'm serving so that I can feel really good about pushing society forward. It wasn't that. It was, I'm serving because, this is, we don't have to go through so much other stuff.
And it was an adventure.
Yes, it was an adventure. And we also were like serving ourselves, and we're like, they realized that like, if I could open my own heart, then maybe somebody else could. If I could open my heart, break it apart, break it open, cry, whatever, I'll go through that. So that, and it has to start with me. I'll go through it. And because the benefits to me are going to be shown to me. And so what if no one else goes through it? If I go through it, then that's the benefit. And it could be picked up either psychically or cosmically or without people even knowing that what something like this is happening to them. It was that selfless kind of thing. It was like, yeah, break my heart apart. I'm not here to like do it for other people, but I'm doing it here on a soul level to be connected to my soul, to the world, to humanity. So it just took folks with a very interesting, protective trust in themselves too. It's hard to put a finger on it, but it doesn't come from folks who ride a roller coaster of scarcity or achievement or,
We learned it comes down to responsibility, a self-responsibility, and that's what makes a person open to having their heart broken open, because they know that they'll be discerning enough to leave the parts that are not necessary and not try to paste them back together to present a facade for everyone else to see that they're okay again. They know that in there's something so perfect, and that they will be of service to that perfect self, that perfect self will step out of the rubble of that shattered fake self that got built up as a means of getting by in the world or protecting oneself from the world, or just a multitude of coping mechanisms that we were taught we had to do in order to be here. And so that self-responsibility piece goes hand in hand with serving. And it's a strange, paradoxical, or it seems paradoxical to the way we generally think, because you're selfless and totally accepting of receiving the benefits at the same time.
Yeah, and I think that whenever we shifted forward, this group of 10, whenever we shifted forward, it was basically because one person just had a thought. And it was just this, and we actually did this so many times that we could actually almost psychically tell that, like, I'm noticing in our dialogue that there's this unspoken thought that's coming up. And so then actually it would just totally generate like this idea, like from someone who like just said, what if we did this? What if we paired this with just extreme positivity and did not believe that anything was negative, and we just paired it with positivity? Well, we learned earlier on, once someone injected a total negative thought into our cosmic dialogue, that it shifted and jolted our body so badly while we were in this conversation that we knew that we were kind of onto something. So that idea of positivity, and then, it was as if Rita's got a visitor, so.
She wanted you to come upstairs. Oh, okay.
So it was as if when one person kind of, and even when they had like that thought of fear that would come up in our conversation, we could kind of tell I just had a huge jolt and I'm feeling there's some fear in our circle. And then someone else would say, I'm feeling that fear too. I'm feeling that fear too. Where is it coming from? And so we could actually just be responsible for this group too. So that's when, but when we knew that we were onto something, when we could really just, we were all in the same vein, we could actually almost just shift our thoughts together. We could actually kind of combine this. And we did like, sometimes we did an hour, 2 hours. We broadcast these on YouTube. And so that got some attention to some folks who really saw this and like were really kind of touched, and like they would see this through a video and they'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm starting to feel something. And so like other, and they weren't even participating, but they were watching us do it. And so they were starting to feel something shift in them, and they're like, there's something here. And so a few folks like saw these videos and they wanted to like kind of research this communication technique that would, maybe this would like help people with a certain chronic condition. Those are the researchers. They wanted to help chronic conditions or psychological diagnoses or, things in the world that we had no concern about, because we were just shifting ourselves, because we believe this was a higher way of existence in humanity. So it was very fascinating how the researchers came along and how they kind of like progressed, and more of them became interested. Then they wanted to put electrodes on us and measure our brainwave activity, and we were like, all right, whatever, we'll still do what we do. They wanted to measure, I don't think no one like consented to like blood tests or DNA sampling, but brainwaves were like, whatever, that's fine. So it was really interesting. They wanted to like find some sort of measurable thing, because this was different than anything they'd seen. So, and we agreed. We're like, okay, we'll let the world come in and do whatever, because what we're doing is not necessarily of this physical world, and more power to them. So.
And they also measured various things that were happening in our lives and around us, the peripheral evidence of things changing. And that was actually more telling than our brain waves, and as well as opposition. Like when we get interrupted, we know we're onto something. We know there's something big that that wants to interrupt the transmission here. And we just, okay, I didn't answer that knock, but she still came in.
That was a real common occurrence too, and we almost expected that. Our group almost expected that all the time. We're like, once we got into something really big that we were talking about, we almost expected that. There was one time it was like, oh my gosh, we got through that whole talk without having an intrusion.
Right. So, and when it couldn't happen through the internet going out, we send a messenger.
So it was almost as if, and then some researchers were very like interested, like how is it that they almost have this predictive nature as to, and some of them were discounted and say, oh, this is just a coincidence, and then a few of them were a little more interested in that. So that was a fascinating thing. We got to watch the researchers, and we were almost felt like we were actually researching them. But it just
we made them agree to film their meetings also, their consultations about what they had found in their findings in the data that they collected about us. So we got to watch them. And then they started sharing things that were happening for them as well. And that was, of course, when it's about them, it becomes really fascinating to them. So that launched them forward in the research a little bit more.
It did, and we actually saw it coming that there would just be one left. We saw it coming that there'd be one researcher left standing at one point. we even like talked about in our Cosmic Dialog. One time we just dedicated a whole Cosmic Dialog to our researchers and their lives and what was going on. And like, it's 10 years from now from this research experiment that everyone has had. And so let's have a dialogue about that. And that was kind of like mind-blowing for them. And shortly after that, more things started happening. And we actually like had ironically, a Cosmic Dialog about one of them will be left. There will be one left. And that we were okay with that. So.
And they were all, no, we're in this. And this one by one, and then the last few just all was a mass exodus until that one person who got it, hung around, came back.
Yeah.
And it came down to that self-responsibility piece. Willing to go along because they knew that they'd step out and be their full soul self.
And they took full responsibility to actually learning that this is that even their research was their own personal case study for their own life and their own journey. And that's what this researcher did. And then that allowed the one person to walk out that was part of our group, say, I've had enough of this. And then a researcher just said, I'm a scientist, but I know that this is my journey and I have to be the case study for myself. And so may I join you? And so now we're looking for those folks who just come to us saying, I'm ready to make my own self-responsible case study for my own life and how that shifts humanity forward no matter what I trust and what I don't. And now may I join you? That's how that's always happened. So, yeah, and it only took us shifting in the future 1 year. And we kept doing that anyway. So,
yeah. I like it. I'll see you.
See you there. We'll see everyone there. So, or not everyone, but hopefully it just takes people to make a choice. I've watched you. I've witnessed some changes. I've come to the conclusion that, I want to try and have myself be my own case study for my own soul's progression in this human experience, this human experiment. So, and when they're ready to just step in, they come to us. So, it's an open invite.
Yeah, come along.
I knew we'd figure this out by doing a Cosmic Dialog.
Right. We always know what we're doing in these.
Yeah. So now onward to the 10. So we'll see.
Well, I look forward to meeting everyone.
We've already met you. You've already met us.
Right. Thanks.